Welcome to Techverse. This week, SpaceX said that it'll postpone the launch of a high-altitude test of its experimental Starship spacecraft, which is meant to transport passengers and cargo into Earth's orbit and even to destinations such as Moon and Mars. The test was expected to take place as part of the preparations for the Starship's initial launch, while a decision by the Federal Aviation Administration placed SpaceX's ambitions on hold. Elon Musk, the company's CEO, expressed his displeasure with the decision. The Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) has once again put a halt to SpaceX's preparations to launch a rocket into space. Now that some intriguing information regarding why the FAA decided to suspend the launches are emerging, we're still waiting for a comprehensive explanation for the last-minute cancellations that occurred at the last minute. The computer system was forced to shut down unexpectedly. According to space news journalist Jeff Faust, a source who is familiar with the conversations taking place between the FAA and SpaceX, in other words, it is unclear which of these two organizations the source represents, informed him that the FAA had requested additional information about the SN9 version of Starship, according to the journalist. Furthermore, Faust pointed out that, just a few days before the conflict erupted on January 26th, FAA Associate Administrator Wayne Monteith spoke at an industry event in which he appeared to allude the eagerness of commercial space startups to test rockets as quickly as possible and suggested that CEOs such as Musk could even contact him directly if there were any issues. According to Faust, Monteith indicated at the time that CEOs and presidents of corporations, as well as other business executives, had direct access to him. Our teams are urged to contact me personally if they believe one of our teams is miscommunicating or failing to communicate effectively with another team member. Since the beginning of the previous year, SpaceX has been planning for the first Starship orbital flight test to be conducted. But as time passes, the experiment is being postponed for a variety of reasons, some of which are listed in the following paragraphs. It was intended that the SN20 prototype be used for the first Starship orbital flight experiment before the SN20 prototype, which was to be more stable and well-tested than the SN20 prototype, would be used for the second Starship orbital flight experiment before the SN20 prototype, aka Ship-20. Early this week, Elon Musk announced on Twitter that the SN20 prototype would no longer be used for the maiden orbital flight, in contravention of his previous assurances. For this reason, either a prototype from the present SN21 or SN22 aircraft will be used, or a brand new aircraft will be created specifically for this purpose from the ground up. Even the Booster 4 rocket prototype appears to have been eliminated from the first orbital flight test, according to Elon Musk's response to the query. The business's first Starship orbital flight test, according to Elon Musk, will now most likely take place in May rather than earlier this year, as the company had previously anticipated. Another snag in the development of Raptor V2.0 rocket engines has led the program to be delayed, which has resulted in a delay in the launch schedule. Elon Musk underlined his excitement in a tweet last year, stating that the first orbital flight would be accomplished using the first generation of Raptor engines, which are now in the development stage. Although this test is being conducted by SpaceX, it will use Raptor 2 engines from the second generation, which will be launched in 2018. The first Starship orbital journey will be propelled by Raptor 2 engines, which are substantially more capable and reliable than their predecessors in both performance and reliability. When measured at sea level, the thrust is 230 tons or 500,000 pounds or 500,000 pounds. It's possible that an orbital test flight will take place in May if all 39 flight-worthy engines are ready by the end of next month and the remaining month is spent connecting them all together. According to a NASA report published last year, the first Starship orbital flight test is expected to take place in March of the following year, with the second flight test following in March of the following year. The project, however, was never finished as a result of Elon Musk and SpaceX's decision to use Raptor 2 engines rather than first-generation engines, and as a result, the project was cancelled. It is not only significantly more powerful than its predecessor, but it's also significantly simpler to design when compared to the Raptor V1 in terms of overall complexity. 185 tons of thrust at sea level, but the Raptor V2 engine produces 230 tons of thrust at the same altitude, indicating a significant difference. At this moment, it's unclear why SpaceX chose Raptor V2 for the orbital flight test rather than Raptor V1 as the test vehicle. A number of times, the SN20 rocket booster has been placed on top of the Super Heavy rocket booster at this point in the launch process. Prior to the launch of SN20 Starship into space, SpaceX completed the final loading of the spacecraft atop Super Heavy Booster 4, which was completed earlier this week. At this point, the stack has been destacked for the second time in as many minutes. Additionally, SpaceX successfully completed a cryogenic proving test on Starship 20 last week, marking the first time that the company had accomplished such a test. This was the first cryo-proof test performed on the Starship prototype, and it was done as part of the Starship prototype's full stacking. The Starship prototype passed the test with flying colors. Atop that, a propellant load test was performed on the Starship at the Starbase launch site when it was fully laden with cargo. Due to the testing conducted by SpaceX, the company is gathering the knowledge and observations that will be required for the ultimate launch of the Starship into space. Inconsistencies in the Federal Aviation Administration's approval process. To allow for the completion of an environmental study, the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) has once again postponed the deadline for launching an orbital trip from Starbase Boca Chica in Texas to April 29, 2022, according to reports from Reuters. The FAA originally set the deadline for launching an orbital trip from Starbase Boca Chica, Texas for April 29, 2022. After only a few days of speculation, Elon Musk hinted at the potential of a trip to the International Space Station as early as May. The certification from the Federal Aviation Administration arrived on Friday. In the event of a prolonged inspection and licensing process, it is probable that the Starship orbital launch test will be postponed even further. The Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) requested a vote on whether or not an orbital launch from Boca Chica should proceed in September of last year. The vote was held in December of the same year. The final findings were announced in December of last year. Due to the delays in the assessment process, SpaceX has been unable to launch a spacecraft into orbit despite the fact that the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) released the draft Programmatic Environmental Assessment (PDF) for the Starship Super Heavy orbital flight test approximately 5 months ago. According to recent reports, SpaceX's long-delayed Starship orbital test mission may finally be on its way to the International Space Station. Elon Musk voiced his confidence in SpaceX's ability to successfully launch Starship into space in an interview with CNBC. Starship is scheduled to launch in May, according to Musk. According to Business Insider, the company hopes to have 39 flight-worthy engines available by April, with the integration process taking around 1 month. Following Musk's statement, improved Raptor 2 engines would be necessary for the launch as they are significantly more capable as well as substantially more reliable than the prior versions. When SpaceX began mass manufacturing of the Raptor 2 in December 2021, they claimed that the design was half the cost of its predecessor while also providing significantly more power and requiring fewer parts than its predecessor. They also claimed that the design was half the cost of its predecessor. They are expected to be used to power both the Starship and its Super Heavy launcher, and they are also expected to be utilized to power SpaceX's plans for missions to the Moon and Mars in the future. While technology advancement is important, there are a variety of additional elements that influence the launch. In order to carry out the mission, SpaceX will need to obtain an FAA authorization, and the company will finish a vital environmental analysis on March 28th before launching the mission on April 1st. If any regulatory red flags are raised, the launch could be postponed until the issue is resolved. Regardless of what the Federal Aviation Administration rules on the matter, SpaceX's May delivery deadline is unlikely to be met. It was unduly optimistic about its timescales when the corporation suggested the possibility of getting a Starship into orbit early this year. Just ask the enthusiasts who have been waiting for years for a Falcon Heavy mission to launch. Nonetheless, there is now enough components in place that liftoff might occur within a few weeks rather than several months as had been previously predicted. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe to our channel for more.